The soft winter sun fell across the glass towers of Seattle, glinting against the windows of Ethan Walker's office, a place where deals worth millions were made. But today, the powerful single-dad CEO wasn't thinking about business. His usually sharp eyes were distant, unfocused. Below, cars streamed like veins of silver through the busy streets, and across the road stood the daycare where his 5-year-old daughter, Lily, spent her days. He could see her through the window, a small figure sitting alone at a table, crayons scattered around her like tiny bursts of color. She was drawing again. Ethan's chest tightened when he realized what she was drawing this time. Another picture of a family, always 3 people, but one face missing. That empty space was a wound he couldn't close, no matter how hard he tried. He remembered the teacher's gentle voice that morning, the kind that tried not to sound too worried. "She's been asking about her mom a lot lately," she'd said, handing him the picture Lily made. "Maybe you could talk to her about it." Ethan had smiled politely, promised he would, but the truth was, he didn't know how. How could he explain loss to a child who barely remembered her mother's face? The accident had taken everything from them, his wife, his laughter, his peace. He had buried himself in work after that, building an empire out of his pain, but some nights, when the city went quiet, he could still hear Lily crying out for a mother who would never come back. That evening, Ethan attended a charity gala, not out of choice, but obligation. The event was for underprivileged children, a cause his late wife had once supported passionately. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, and guests in expensive gowns sipped champagne while discussing philanthropy like it was a business deal. Ethan stood apart, scanning the room with the detached air of a man who belonged everywhere yet felt at home nowhere. Then his gaze landed on someone different, a young woman arranging gifts at the donation table, her hair tied loosely, her eyes kind but tired. She wasn't part of the glittering crowd. She looked real. Her name was Maya Carter, a nurse who worked double shifts at a children's hospital. She was volunteering that night because she couldn't say no when it came to kids. When Ethan introduced himself, she didn't seem impressed by his name or his title, just smiled warmly and said, "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else." Her honesty caught him off guard. Most people treated him like royalty, Maya spoke to him like a person. For the first time in years, he found himself smiling without forcing it. They talked for a few minutes, about the charity, about her work, about Lily, though he didn't plan to mention his daughter at all. Something about Maya's calm voice made him open up, just a little. Lily, who had been clinging to her father's hand all evening, had grown restless. She tugged free and wandered toward the donation table where Maya stood. Within seconds, she was talking, shyly at first, then with a kind of spark Ethan hadn't seen in her eyes for months. Maya knelt beside her, laughing softly at Lily's stories about her drawings, about her mom in heaven, and the puppy she wanted someday. Ethan watched, speechless. It was like seeing sunlight spill into a room long kept dark. Lily, who rarely spoke to strangers, had taken to Maya like she'd known her forever. Later, as the event ended and the crowd thinned, Ethan found Lily fast asleep on a chair beside Maya, her tiny hand still clutching the nurse's sleeve. For a long moment, he just stood there, staring. The sight did something to him, something deep, something he couldn't name. He didn't want to break the moment, didn't want to wake his daughter from that peaceful sleep. When Maya carefully tried to move, Lily stirred, murmuring softly, "Mommy." Maya froze, her eyes darting to Ethan's. The word hung in the air between them, fragile as glass. Ethan's throat tightened. After the guests left, Ethan offered to walk Maya to her car. The night was cold, the city lights flickering in puddles on the pavement. They didn't talk much, both lost in thought, until they reached her car. Then, without warning, Ethan spoke. His voice was low, uncertain, as though afraid of the words he was about to say. "Can you pretend to be my daughter's mom, just for a while?" Maya blinked, caught completely off guard. "What?" she asked, half laughing, thinking it was a joke. But Ethan's expression didn't change. His eyes, usually so controlled, were filled with something raw, desperation, maybe even fear. He explained, stumbling over his words. Lily had been struggling, she had nightmares, she cried for her mother, and nothing Ethan did seemed to comfort her. "You saw how she looked at you," he said quietly. She smiled. She hasn't done that in months. He wasn't asking for romance or pity, just for his daughter's peace. Maya didn't know what to say. It was absurd, unbelievable, yet somehow, heartbreakingly sincere. She saw the exhaustion in his face, the love buried beneath layers of control. She could tell he wasn't a man used to asking for help. "Mr. Walker, I'm not sure that's a good idea," Maya said gently. "Children can get attached easily, and I know," Ethan interrupted, his voice cracking. "But she already has. Just until she's ready, please." Maya looked away, her breath visible in the cold air. She had seen fathers like him at the hospital, men who carried the weight of the world but didn't know how to hold a broken heart. She should have said no. Yet something inside her couldn't. She thought of Lily's innocent smile, the way the little girl's fingers had curled around hers like she was holding on to hope itself. Slowly, she nodded. Just for a little while, she whispered. Ethan exhaled, relief and guilt mixing in his chest. He didn't realize it yet, but that single promise, born out of kindness and desperation, was about to reshape every part of their lives. Maya Carter had no idea who he truly was, how powerful he really was. And Ethan Walker had no idea that letting her into his daughter's world would awaken feelings he thought had died with his wife. The night wind swept through the empty parking lot as they stood there, two strangers bound by one small child's need for love. Neither of them knew it then, but the moment Lily opened her eyes the next morning and saw Maya making pancakes in their kitchen, smiling like she belonged, would mark the beginning of something far greater than any of them expected. It would be the start of healing, of love rediscovered, and of a story that would change 3 lives forever. 4 days after Christmas, the world outside Ethan Walker's truck looked like a painting, endless white fields under a pale New Mexico sky, mountains rising in the distance like sleeping giants. He had come here to escape the constant noise of Seattle, the ringing phones, the board meetings, the reminders of everything he'd lost. The quiet had always been his refuge. But that afternoon, something broke the silence. As he drove down a deserted canyon road, a sudden flicker of movement near a broken billboard caught his eye. He almost kept driving, until instinct made him hit the brakes. What he saw next froze his heart. Beneath the crumbling sign lay a small child, shivering, wrapped in a torn blanket. The boy couldn't have been older than 6. His skin was pale from hunger, his lips cracked, his eyes hollow with fear. For a second, Ethan thought he might be seeing a ghost. No one should have been out there in that cold. He rushed to the boy, taking off his coat and wrapping it around him. Hey, it's okay," he murmured, his breath forming white clouds in the freezing air. "You're safe now, little one. I've got you." The boy's tiny hand gripped his sleeve weakly before he went limp in his arms. Without wasting a second, Ethan raced to the nearest hospital, snow kicking up behind his tires like smoke. At the hospital in Taos, doctors and nurses swarmed the emergency room. The boy was severely malnourished, his temperature dangerously low. Ethan stayed by the door, guilt gnawing at him. What if he'd driven by a minute later? The nurse told him quietly that the child had been surviving on melted snow and a few scraps of food for nearly a week. Nobody knew who he was. There was no ID, no sign of parents, just an old handmade necklace with tribal beads, Apache in design. Ethan nodded silently and paid for everything, refusing to leave his side. He didn't care about the cost. Money had never felt more meaningless. Over the next few days, Ethan visited the boy every morning. The first time, the child wouldn't speak, just watched him from behind tired eyes. Ethan brought small gifts, a stuffed bear, warm socks, and a cup of hot chocolate. He didn't talk much, just sat there quietly, reading the newspaper or humming softly. On the 3rd day, the boy finally spoke a single word, Kai. Ethan realized it was his name. After that, a fragile trust began to grow between them. Kai would take Ethan's hand when they walked around the hospital garden, smiling faintly when Ethan made a joke. The boy had no idea who Ethan really was, a powerful CEO known for his ruthless business sense, and Ethan liked it that way. Around Kai, he wasn't the Walker Corporation tycoon. He was just a man trying to help a child find warmth again. 4 days later, snow fell thick over Ethan's ranch just outside Santa Fe. He had brought Kai home temporarily, waiting for the authorities to locate his family. The house, usually quiet, now felt alive with laughter. Lily, Ethan's daughter, adored Kai. They built snowmen, shared cookies by the fire, and fell asleep on the couch watching cartoons. For the first time in years, Ethan's home felt like a family again. But that peace didn't last long. Late that afternoon, as the snowflakes drifted across the porch, Ethan heard a slow, deliberate knock on the door. Something in the sound made him pause. When he opened it, he found 3 women standing in the cold, wrapped in traditional shawls, their faces proud but solemn, their eyes glistening with emotion. For a moment, none of them spoke. The eldest woman stepped forward, her voice soft but steady. "You found our kin, our Apache child," she said. "We've come to thank you." Ethan's breath caught. He looked at Kai, who had appeared behind him, clutching Lily's hand. The women's eyes filled with tears at the sight of him. The youngest of the three stepped forward and whispered something in Apache. Kai's face lit up, and he ran into her arms, crying. The sound of his sobs echoed through the quiet snow, raw and heartbreaking. Ethan felt something twist inside him, a strange mixture of relief and sorrow. The women invited Ethan to sit with them inside. As they warmed their hands by the fire, they explained that Kai had gone missing from their reservation nearly a week ago. His mother had died the year before, and his grandmother, the eldest woman, had been searching ever since. "The snow took him from us," she said quietly, "but you brought him back." Ethan shook his head. "No," he replied, "he saved me more than I saved him." The women looked at each other knowingly. In their culture, they believed in fate, that souls crossed paths for a reason. One of them placed a beaded bracelet in Ethan's hand and said, "You were chosen to find him." As the evening deepened, Ethan walked them to their truck. The wind was sharp, carrying the scent of pine and snow. Kai looked up at him, his small hand clutching Ethan's sleeve. "You'll come visit?" he asked, his voice trembling. Ethan knelt down, brushing the boy's hair gently. "Always," he promised. "You've got family now, both here and there." Kai smiled faintly, then climbed into the truck beside his grandmother. Ethan watched as the taillights disappeared into the white horizon, leaving only silence behind. Back inside, the house felt empty again. Lily sat quietly by the window, watching the snow fall. "Daddy," she whispered, "will Kai be okay?" Ethan smiled softly, pulling her close. "Yes, sweetheart," he said. "He's home now." But as he held her, a strange warmth spread through his chest, the feeling of something unseen but powerful, like the echo of a promise. He had saved one starving boy, but in doing so, he had discovered something far greater, the meaning of compassion, the bridge between worlds, and the quiet truth that family isn't always bound by blood. That night, as the wind howled outside, Ethan lit a small candle by the window. It was a tradition he learned from the Apache women, a light for safe journeys and souls that cross paths by destiny. Watching the flame flicker, he whispered a silent prayer for Kai and his people. He didn't know if he'd ever see them again, but he knew one thing with certainty: some encounters aren't accidents. They are whispers of fate, reminders that even in the coldest winter, kindness can ignite the warmest fire.